Why can a simple hospital visit cost $6,000 in America? How to improve your cognition? What are some of the best supplements everyone should be taking? Why are so many young men now dependent on TRT? How worried should we be about processed foods? Welcome back to the Pod Digest. In this video, we will dive deep into some of these questions and hear opinions from Dr. Peter Attia. Dr. Peter Attia is a physician longevity expert, podcaster, and an author. Although there is an unlimited amount of health advice available on the internet, Peter helps cut through the noise about what is actually most effective to improve your fitness and longevity. Okay, first, as most people already know, a very common story in the US is go to the ER to end up needing a bag of IV fluids. Comically, we can get charged $1,400 for a bag of normal saline that actually costs between $2 and $3. These are the breaks specifically in the American healthcare system. So why is it so broken? This has to do with the complexity of a multi-payer system and basically the way contracts are negotiated between payers and hospitals. There's also ridiculous pricing and a false sense of how much things cost in hospitals. They mark up the price so that they can give you a big discount if you're in-network. That's the catch right there. If you get hit by a car, some might say that it is better to walk it off. The point being that there are medical emergencies that can happen that can ruin your life by you having to fix them, not by you not fixing them. Healthcare is the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States. The people who are most impacted are not the people at the very bottom of the socioeconomic ladder here, because they qualify for Medicaid, which is meant for the people who truly have nothing. But if you go 1 level or 2 levels up to people who do have health insurance, but they're grossly underinsured or they can't afford health insurance because they're working and they have these other expenses, they can't afford that. These are the people that are absolutely devastated by the system. And on the flip side of that, on some metrics, the US healthcare system is hands down the best in the world. The US has the best to offer in terms of the tip of the spear in quality for medicine. But at the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to cost and when it comes to coverage and accessibility, it's dead last in the developed world. Why is the US medicine backwards? That is because they try to fix a problem after it's happened, as opposed to working out what's going to happen and getting out ahead of it. The things that should be on top of our mind are attention, focus, and ability to pay attention to what we are doing. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the next question about improving cognition. The best thing to improve the environment of your mind is sleep. It's very difficult to cognitively perform being sleep deprived. Now, you might look at all these people who don't sleep and are clearly doing very well. What you don't know is imagine that person sleeping 8 hours a night instead of 3. The very people would be performing even at a higher level. And exercise is also a remarkable way to provide the obvious metabolic and circulatory food to the brain. Nutrition clearly plays a role in managing our health. A big carb-rich meal is going to negatively impact cognition. Moving on, there are some rules or techniques that you set yourself to try and maximize deep work time, which adds to our cognition. Don't have any notifications on your phone except the phone ring. In this day and age, nobody actually calls you, so you're never really interrupted by your phone. The other thing is to schedule big blocks of time early in the day that are quality work time. Another crucial factor that Dr. Attia mentions is blood pressure. Blood pressure also affects our cognitive decline over the long term. The two big movers when it comes to keeping that in a good range are weight and exercise. Weight meaning weight loss and cardiorespiratory fitness. Not doing anywhere near enough cardio means getting out of breath while going up a set of stairs, struggling to touch their toes, etc. All the while we are striving for physical health and longevity, but ignoring emotional health could be the ultimate curse of all. If your emotional health, which encompasses many things like happiness, the quality of your relationships, any sense of purpose, is in a bad place, why would you want to live longer? You're objectively suffering. So why would extending that suffering be of any value? If you have every single thing imaginable, but you have no connection to other people, what do you have? Longevity risk is anything that is a threat to the length of life or the quality of life. Those of us who come from a productivity background or a biohacking background or a strength and fitness background, we try to reduce the human experience down to metrics and numbers and reps and sets. But the actual phenomenological experience of being a human is emotions. The high achievers want to do things and leave a mark on the world. But so much of that comes from whipping themselves into submission all the time. I'm going to castigate myself until I bow under the strain of how much torment I've given to myself. So it's one thing to say, I don't like that. I wasn't able to do X, Y, and Z. That's a different statement from, I am a worthless person because I didn't do X, Y, and Z. Our self-worth can be increased by a very deliberate set of actions. The easiest way to reprogram is through voice. Every single time Peter had a moment of self-cursing situation, he would be instructed to take out his phone and record audibly a description of what he would say to a friend had they just committed the same egregious act. An example would be, if I'm playing soccer and I'm really doing a lousy job of it, instead of jumping into self-loathing, I would take out my phone and record a memo speaking, but not to myself, but to my friend. Like, your friend had just shot as poorly as I did. What would I say to them? And that would be gentler. And this is the single greatest example of neuroplasticity that we can witness ourselves. Self-talk is the internal physics of your system. To think that our mind is as malleable as that. The frequency with which one gets angry can be reduced to a fraction of what it used to be. Another thing we touch up in this episode is the rise of testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, usage among young men. The hard-charging dude, that's, maybe mid-20s, crushing it in the office, going to the gym, maybe partying on a weekend, once or twice, a bit of alcohol, whatever. This becomes a kind of vicious feedback loop, which is precisely why men are looking to things like TRT, because of how hard they're potentially pushing themselves during the week. So testosterone replacement therapy might work for an appropriately aged individual at an appropriate physiologic dose. The two big risks that people have historically been concerned with are prostate cancer and heart disease. Testosterone replacement therapy is not increasing the risk of prostate cancer. When a man has undergone a prostatectomy for prostate cancer, his prostate is removed, testosterone replacement therapy is still used in that man. His TSA will still be monitored every 3 months for any sign of recurrence, and if there is an infected recurrence, TRT is immediately ceased. What is known is that testosterone would feed prostate cancer. Is there any evidence that testosterone replacement therapy initiates prostate cancer? No, there is not. Testosterone replacement therapy, when done badly. Patients who walk in with a prescription of free testosterone of 35 nanograms per deciliter, which is like twice what is considered reasonable. These people are making red blood cells at an alarming rate, and they need to be monitored very closely for increased blood viscosity. These are the blood donation people, because your bone marrow becomes so revved up that it is making too much and it's too thick. With these super physiologic doses, there are other issues around a lot of estrogen and DHT. Permanent loss of libido would be bad. But when it comes to exogenously increasing testosterone levels, it will cut down on endogenous production, including sperm production, and therefore a reduction in fertility. At some point that's retrievable, and at some point it becomes more and more difficult to retrieve. So it depends on the person's age when they start and what their testicular reserve is. But generally speaking, 2 years of exogenous testosterone can spell the end of endogenous production and therefore a lifetime dependency. This might be an enormous risk for a man in his 20s. There isn't a better way to naturally increase testosterone than adequate sleep and reduction of cortisol. Next, they talk a bit about the intake of basic supplements. The basic supplements most people should at least be considering are activated curcumin, magnesium, creatine, methylated B vitamins. For example, magnesium has 3 to 4 different forms, so you have to decide the form depending on what it would be needed for. Organic or inorganic? Is it for performance and avoiding cramping? Are you taking it more for regularity? Are you taking it more for cognitive benefits or muscle function? So there are these various considerations one should take into account when we think about these basic supplements. Another thing they touch up on is the intake of microplastics and how it disrupts our body. Microplastics are one of the major endocrine disruptors. The 2 most important things you can do to avoid polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, from a drinking perspective is to use glass or stainless steel bottles. Dr. Attia is next asked this question. How warranted is the huge panic about processed foods in your opinion? He says, one of the things that makes processed foods so appealing is not just the taste, but it's the convenience and the caloric density per unit dollar. There seem to be certain areas of health that people love to lock onto, like the specific type of artificial sweetener that goes into a beverage, The ionizing or non-ionizing radiation that's coming out of your AirPods, the Wi-Fi signal, 5G towers that you live near, and bits and pieces like that. We have all heard about probiotics, but what makes a good probiotic? First, it has to be alive, which turns out to be much harder than most companies appreciate. Probiotics need to be anaerobes, since those are the bacteria that we're trying to replenish in the colon. So an anaerobe has to be manufactured in a completely oxygen-free environment, which is really hard to do from a manufacturing process viewpoint. So when most probiotic companies tell us that these items act as the CFUs or colon-forming units, they're not actually checking whether anaerobes are alive or not. And by the time these things get to us, they're completely dead. Rule number one is we have to know to buy it from somebody who knows what they're making. Alive, freeze-dried, and will come back to life when you ingest it, or will come back to a state of function. Moreover, he says that insoluble fiber is the most important thing you feed your gut. Vegetables in particular matter the most. Therefore, processed foods which severely lack these fibers are going to impact our gut health. Dr. Attia finally ends it by saying this: the older you get, the wiser you get, the more you realize that perfectionism is potentially an evil master. People sort of have to learn that lesson the hard way. Thank you for watching. We hope you like this video. Feel free to leave suggestions or constructive comments for our improvement, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.